All right, everybody, in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started. So I just wanted to again thank everybody who was able to join us on our webinar today. Today we'll be talking about how to secure your remote workforce. This is just a series of tips and tricks. My goal is to try to provide you guys with good, pertinent information on how to protect your team while they're working remotely, working from their house, information on password management, information on user security training, and information on utilizing their endpoint securely, and a little bit of information on how maybe they can secure some of their home networking equipment. So like we did on our webinar last time, we'll be posting a blog post up on our site. We'll be sending a link out to that tomorrow at the absolute latest with all the information, including a download of this webinar so you can watch it later or share it with somebody, as well as hyperlinks to all of the documentation and infographics that we've shared today with you guys. So don't worry about having to stop us and ask us for links or putting information in the questions box, because we're going to post all that back out on our follow-up on the website. Also, wanted to let you guys know that we've got a Q&A session, and we've got awesome panelists available. We've got Haley, Dan, and Cassandra, all from Iron Edge Group, and they are here to answer questions as they come up. And then at the end, we'll go back through some of the answered questions and see if there are some things that maybe the rest of the group might need to hear about, and we'll bring that up so that we can address those for the entire group. So I want to go ahead and get started. Again, we appreciate you guys joining us. I'll give you a little bit of background on me and Iron Edge Group, and then we'll get directly into what we're up to. So a little bit of information about me. My name is Andrew Moore. I'm the COO of Iron Edge Group. I'm an LSS Greenbelt. I have a degree in business management. I've been doing this almost 20 years, and I started in bioterrorism defense, working on a grant from the newly developed Homeland Security Group. I worked for the City of Houston's Epidemiology Department, where we constantly worried about pandemics. So this is kind of right in my alley over the last few weeks about making sure that people are remote and how to make sure that people are secure and making sure that we've got business continuity in place, which, by the way, next week we'll be doing a business continuity webinar that Dan Mallard's going to be hosting, and I'll be one of the panelists. We're really looking forward to getting some folks involved there and answer some of your questions about business continuity and what that means for your organization and how you can move that ball forward. A little bit about Iron Edge. We are the premier IT solutions provider for Texas-based businesses, although we have companies from all over the United States with offices all over the world. We provide service-centric strategy and support to eliminate frustrations companies face with technology. So companies come to us when they lose sleep worrying about the devastating impact of losing their data that isn't backed up, or they want to prevent catastrophic loss of revenue, clients, and intellectual property due to cyber attack. So these are just a couple of the things that we'll talk about today, but that's just a little bit about who we are. We've been in business for 14 years, and we are looking forward to helping our teams as much as we possibly can moving forward through this pandemic and beyond. So let's get into it. Why should executives care about cybersecurity, right? So it's not just end users, but it's people who are running an organization. And I think it's important for everybody to realize what the true cost of cybersecurity is. And it's not that it's expensive to recover your backups and that it's a lot of lost time, although that's an important part of the true cost of cybersecurity. But if a company is truly breached, some of the things that companies have to realize is in their cards moving forward is there are laws out there that require most organizations to notify both their employees and their partners and clients about the breach, which can be potentially difficult to do and take a considerable amount of time. You're going to lose a lot of goodwill with your clients, and you're going to have to spend a significant amount of account management dealing with that breach. So all of the wonderful things that you've done for those organizations and your clients and your partners over the many, many years will be completely burned to the ground, and your account managers won't be out there generating new revenue. They'll be out there just trying to make sure that people don't fire you. You also run the potential of losing revenue or intellectual property, which could cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how long you've been down. You'd have to pay for forensics in order for people to determine how the breach occurred. If you do have a cyber policy, most cyber policies will require you to start with forensics in order for the policy to pay out. And then hopefully you have insurance. and that you're able to get that money. Sometimes you'll have to come out of pocket first and be reimbursed, and there can be a significant amount of cost with that. So these are a bunch of things that a lot of people don't think about. Sometimes it's just, well, if we get a virus or if we get ransomware, we'll restore from backups, or we'll be down for a little while and it'll be fine. But really, organizations need to realize that it's a lot more nuanced than that, and that moving into the 21st century, that breaches cost people a lot more than just the dollars and cents that they would consider for having a machine down or having their data encrypted. So we're going to talk a little bit about the remote user problem that leads to the potential of having those sort of breaches occur in a network. So we want to start with the phishing problem, right? And why it's an issue. So phishing is a major cause of information leaks in an environment. Phishing is when an email is sent to somebody in your organization and they are pretending to be somebody that they're not, attempting to gain information from that person. Phishing can be very targeted, what you'll hear called spear phishing, where somebody is intimately familiar with what goes on within your organization, and they can use that data to directly target a person within your firm and ask them very specific questions. Times when spear phishing happens is when somebody has already gained access to an email account and they're sitting in your system kind of watching things go back and forth. And as they're watching emails move back and forth within your environment, they're able to understand how your organization communicates with one another. And then from there, what they'll do is target somebody within your organization, let's say somebody in your accounting department or one of your clients, knowing that potentially one of your principals is on vacation or away from the office, and they'll begin to send very targeted emails asking for things like, hey, I need you to change a routing number. And they pretend to be one of your principals or one of your clients. And without controls in place, a lot of the times people will give up information or change information for somebody who's trying to hack their systems and wind up costing your organization a lot of headache. So phishing is a major cause of information leak. Some of the more benign phishing attempts you'll see are when people get emails saying that they're from their bank, asking for them to click on a link so that they can update some account information, and it takes them to a site that looks a lot like their banking site, and they wind up putting in their username and password. There are a lot of things that happen with phishing, and so end users should be super careful about it, and they should know the hallmarks of what a phishing attack looks like, and they should be able to protect themselves from it. And we'll talk a little bit about how we get into the solutions in just a little bit. One of the things that we see a lot is that once people get phished, like I said, usually the person who's phished them will sit inside the organization and watch the email communications go back and forth. Sometimes they can do that by simply logging in and watching the emails within that person's account. Sometimes they'll do things like they'll install an auto forwarder. So emails from that user and to that user are going to an external account. We see that happen sometimes with Office 365 or the Google Suite, where somebody will wind up giving up their information and they'll be able to the hacker will be able to access that user account, get into their email and set up a forwarder in the background that nobody ever sees or knows is there. So it's a really important thing to have security protocols that are put on top of your cloud applications in your systems to monitor that for that sort of thing. But again, it's not somebody simply coming in, pretending to be somebody else and immediately taking your data. They will hide out within your organization and attempt to gain your key user information so that they can attack you when the opportunity exists. Another issue that you wind up having from a user perspective is the dark web. So what a lot of people don't understand is that only about 4% of the internet or the web as we know it is searchable, something that we can actually get to. That includes Google, that includes Amazon, that includes Facebook, that includes a lot of the systems that you're used to seeing. And this very small part of the internet is what everybody's become accustomed to, where it's relatively safe. And although that there are things that are dangerous, where if you go to them, you can get some sort of application installed on your computer you don't want, most of it is not inherently malicious. But if you go deeper into the internet, you'll see things like the dark web and non-searchable data systems. So non-searchable systems would be things like military installations, universities and school systems, private corporation systems, telecom systems, stuff that's not indexable. which is the deep web. And then the dark web is the only way that you can get to it is through a Tor browser, right? And it's a very specialized browser that you use so that you can get in and search things that are in the dark web. And the dark web is a nasty, disgusting place where all sorts of terrible things are bought and sold, and information is provided, including people's credentials, including banking account information. You can buy drugs, you can buy all sorts of stuff on the dark web. It's bananas. The kind of stuff that they sell and the types of storefronts that they have set up, you guys would be super surprised to see. They have stuff like guarantees on data. Like if you buy a bunch of credit card information, that they guarantee that, let's say 80% of it is good and that you can utilize it or your money back. And this is why all of the information goes when you lose data on the internet. It gets put into these honeypots in the dark web, and people sell it. And so the reason that people are able to sell your information on the dark web is because most people use the same password for all websites. This is a big problem. This is a problem for organizations. This is a problem for end users. Because if you use a password, let's say for Uber or for LinkedIn or one of these other systems, and they've been breached, which has happened in the past few years, every time you turn around, there's a new breach that's occurred. If you're using the same email address or username and password on all your accounts, one breach has left you open to everything that you have on the internet. And so end users and people that are working from home sometimes don't realize that. So if they're using, let's say, their business email account on their LinkedIn profiles, and they're using the same password that they use there to log into their email at work, or they're using the same password to log into their computer at work, once that information has been put on the dark web and has been leaked, then anybody on the internet could get those credentials and log into that email account or that domain and get directly into those systems and start wreaking a lot of havoc. So it's really, really, really important for people to understand that password hygiene is an important part of security, the same as understanding what you're clicking on and the potential for getting phished. The other problem we wind up having is the software problem. So this is the third part of the problem that we're seeing. And we have some information here that was compiled a couple of years ago, but it hasn't gotten actually any better, to be honest with you. I went out and looked for new data over the last couple of weeks, and this is all still very pertinent. So 4.2 seconds is the amount of time it takes for a new strain of malware to be discovered and or developed. 4.2 seconds. 92% of attacks are delivered via email. 99% of computers are vulnerable to exploit kits. Now, I always get skeptical when I see something like 99 or 100%. What we say by 99% of computers are vulnerable is that your operating system, let's say you're using Windows 10, it has a bunch of patches on it. And most of those patches are going to prevent people from using an exploit kit to get into your computer and gain access to it or have something nefarious happen on it. But you also have other applications that run in your systems like Adobe, or if you used iTunes, or if you've got Office, or if you have Chrome, or any series of applications that are on your systems, those systems also need to be patched on a fairly regular basis because they are vulnerable too. So if you take the amount of applications and systems that you have on your computer at any given time, and you look at the types of exploits that are available based on how most people patch their systems, it exponentially increases the potential for somebody to get onto that computer and exploit those vulnerabilities. So you're never going to have a completely safe computer unless it's completely taken off the internet or off a network. But 99% of computers can be vulnerable just because of the applications you run on them. Advanced malware is one of the biggest budgeted priorities, but nobody really spends as much money on it as they all say that they're supposed to. And on average, it takes 120 days to discover a data breach. So if you take all of these things together, that malware comes out all the time, attacks are constantly hitting your computer via email and those applications, your computers are always vulnerable, malware isn't always installed on those systems, and on average, once somebody has access to your system, they can sit there and hang out in the background before anybody notices it for 4, 5, 6 months. You have an issue when it comes to system vulnerability. And these are things that can be easily mitigated, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So the solution. So as we go through options on areas of focus, There are 1,000 different ways to mitigate these risks. And we're not going to get into every single one of them, but I do want to touch on what I think are the 3 key areas of focus. And these have a lot to do with how remote workers are accessing your systems and their data and software applications in the cloud. So we're going to talk a little bit about user security training, password and access management, endpoint and home network security. So organizational policies still apply. User training. User training is one of the most important things that companies and people can do to mitigate their risk while working from home. What people have to understand is that organizational policies apply whether you're in the office or out of the office. And one of the things that Dan will talk about next week in our webinar a little bit is about business continuity. And one of the things that we like to talk to our clients about is making sure that your policies and processes that you have when you're in the office are the same as when you're out of the office, because it's a lot easier for people to know what to do in a business continuity event like we're all in now if they do the exact same thing using the exact same applications under the exact same circumstances when they're in the office on a regular basis. So one of the things that's really important is that organizations should continue to make system use policy, employee and customer data privacy policies, and social media policies at the forefront of their training and education. And for employees, take your time and go back through your employee handbook if you have one, or shoot an email over to your HR person and ask if you can take a review of this, because a lot of the times the stuff that you see that you're going to think about doing with how you're going to use the system or how you're going to access your systems remotely, or downloading data, accessing data, are going to be already covered under these privacy policies that you have in place. So it's really important just to make yourself familiar with them again. And if you're an organization owner or manager, make sure that you take some time, because I guess everybody lately has all the time in the world to start going over things. It would be really important to start going over a little bit of how these policies work, and make sure that you review those with your employees. And if you can, like, do a webinar about them with everybody and record it. And that way, when you have new employees, you can just say, hey guys, like, check out the webinar. It already exists. It's pretty awesome. Again, when it comes to employee and customer data privacy, one of the things that we make sure that we tell everybody is do not forward company documents to personal accounts, right? Don't download things from the corporate network onto your personal assets. We really want to make sure that our users aren't taking data and putting it in places it doesn't belong. A lot of organizations haven't implemented or spent a lot of time developing data loss prevention and media management software policies and applications. So if you're not doing those things as an organization, we would strongly recommend that you guys have at least some training around what not to do. I know that sometimes people will be like, hey, you know, I'm using my personal laptop while I'm remotely accessing my RDP systems at the office. And it'd be a lot easier for me if I just, you know, downloaded this email document so I could keep it up on my other screen. Again, that's not something we recommend doing. We think that it's a potential security risk. And I'll talk a little bit about personal use assets later in the presentation, but just something to be aware of. Don't forward documents to your personal accounts. More user training. So user training, again, I can't talk more strongly about how important user training is. So one of the things that's been coming around over the last few years is end user security training. There are some really great products on the market. Most of them are resold through managed services providers. And again, we offer a couple of different options. The one that we are promoting and the one that we use is called KnowBe4. It's awesome. And it allows organizations to set up phishing training, PCI and compliance training. It's all based on videos on the internet. It's amazing stuff. We really like it a lot. And what we've noticed is that when we initially baseline a client, somewhere around 25% of those system or the users that are baselined wind up clicking on some sort of a phishing link. And they get tricked, and then they get told, hey guys, let's start doing some training. So over the course of the next 60 days or so, they wind up actually taking these trainings, and additional phishing emails start coming out that are from the system trying to trick them. And if they click on any of those links, a pop-up comes up and basically says, hey, you've been tricked and you got to take additional training. And so the HR departments work hand in hand with the IT team to make sure that these people are taking these trainings and that it's mandatory and there's a policy for it. Again, part of a good business continuity plan and security plan would be make sure that those HR and IT departments are working hand in hand to ensure that people are taking this training. And then over time, you'll see that we've noticed the same numbers. By 12 months of implementing these services and systems, usually you have a very, very, very low fail rate of people clicking on things. And a lot of the times it's by accident. So it's been a really awesome tool. We've noticed that when we've implemented these tools over a couple of months, we hear from our clients that their employees come to their point of contact or the HR person, or they'll hit up our help desk and say, hey, I got this email. Totally looks like phishing, is it? And we're like, yep, that's totally a phishing email. Or yeah, we were trying to trick you. You got us. And so it becomes almost gamified, and they really enjoy the idea of them, the employees being able to participate in keeping things safe. So how can you guys deal with this at home if you don't have this sort of training available to you through your organization? KnowBe4 has a super sweet home course, which is awesome. And I have this home course up. So I'll bring this over here. So the home course is really cool. There's an introduction to the home course, right? And any of your users, again, this is free, right? We have the information on our website. But this home course is offered by KnowBe4 for anybody who's working from home. It goes through passwords, online and banking, keeping your identity safe, avoiding malware, personal information, online stuff for your kids, securing your home network, email safety. So this is a really cool set of training that's available to anybody who's working from home right now. And I strongly recommend that you share this with your team if you don't already have KnowBe4. We've sent this out to all of our clients to send to their employees, but this is a really cool opportunity for you to get involved and get some of this documentation. They have really neat little training videos that they go through. So I like this a lot, and I strongly recommend that you guys take advantage of it. So let's move on to passwords. Monitoring and management of your passwords. So just so everybody's aware, your personal information is all over the internet. I've kind of beat the dark web to death regarding passwords and the dark web, but the open web, things that you guys have information about you on the internet, such as social websites, such as information about you on your business website. There's all sorts of data about you on the internet. And the web can be used for bad as much as it's positive. And what we would want to make sure of is users and employees are reviewing what they're posting and the type of information on the public internet, and make sure that they realize that hackers and folks out there can triangulate using social engineering information that they're seeing on the internet, interacting with them on Instagram or Facebook or open social media platforms, and being able to cross-reference that about data that they have available on the open web, whether it's a profile on a website, a picture of them posting something about their activities while they're working remotely. And so I would just make sure that everybody's aware that they're careful about what they're posting and how they're dealing with that information on the open web. So one of the things that people need to understand is that once a password is compromised on the dark web, it can take months before the breach occurs. And it's quite often an extraordinarily long period of time before anybody knows that their credentials are compromised. So what we recommend is to have a dark web scan of your business systems done on a monthly basis. We have a service that offers that. A lot of managed services providers do. If you are not a managed service, we're not working with a managed services provider, or you're working by yourself, we have some sites that are posted, that'll be posted on our blog follow-up, like Have I Been Pwned? Or you could go to Experian.com and they have a dark web scan that you can put your email address into and look up. And so we recommend people know what accounts and systems might have been compromised that are on the internet, and make sure that they go in and they create good password hygiene. They make sure that they go in and change those passwords, right? So it's really important that they are aware of what's been compromised and that they take action to get those things resolved. And organizations should know if their business accounts have been compromised, especially when you have key people within your organization whose accounts potentially have been compromised. You want to work with them to make sure that they're consistently changing those passwords to their email systems, to your domain systems, to anything that they might have administrative access to. And when they go in to change those passwords, one of the things that we recommend strongly is that they look for multi-factor authentication options, right? And multi-factor authentication, I think a couple of years ago, people thought that that was like science fiction and nobody really understood what it was. But what I think everybody's starting to realize now is that multi-factor authentication is when you log into something and it sends you a text and you have to put a code back in, that's a form of multi-factor authentication. Using your fingerprint when you log into something is a form of multi-factor authentication. Having something on your phone like Google Auth or UB or Duo that generates a code every 90 seconds when you log into something that you have to put a secondary form of authentication in, that's MFA. So multi-factor authentication, or MFA, is one of the easiest ways to prevent somebody from getting into your systems. I would recommend that you set it up on everything that you have, and especially with your end users if they have social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, anything they can put MFA on, they should. Office 365 offers MFA. There are MFA modules you can install on remote desktop server systems. MFA is one of the most critical things an organization can do to prevent people from hacking their systems. On our website, we'll be posting for the follow-up to this. I actually have an article from The Verge that has a huge section of information on it about how to secure most major systems with multi-factor authentication, Apple IDs, Facebook, Instagram, anything that's on the internet right now that has the potential for using MFA. We've got a list of systems and how-tos that we'll be posting for being able to secure those with MFA. One of the other things that we strongly recommend is password management. We don't resell LastPass as an organization, but I personally use it. It's a good, I'm not going to say it's an enterprise level solution, although they do have business level systems where you can use them for your business. We have another solution that we use for companies looking to secure their passwords. But for personal password use, LastPass is one of my favorite applications on the net. We're going to be posting back to our hyperlinks, a hyperlink to a CNET article about the best password managers that were issued in 2020. Systems like LastPass, Dashlane, Keeper, 1Password are all great. Some of them are free up to a certain number of passwords. But we recommend strongly that anybody who is on the internet at all ever, doesn't matter how nuanced you are, what level in the organization you are, you should be using a password manager. Password managers are great because they do really neat things. I will show you an example of this password manager. So we've got some cool infographics here, but up here in the corner, you'll see my LastPass systems, right? And my LastPass systems, I can click on it and I can search any of my passwords, and then it'll open it up and I can copy my password into the autofill forms. It'll generate secure passwords for me if I want to do that, if I'm creating a new account. If the account is already in LastPass and I go to the website, let's say I go to gmail.com, it will have a little LastPass box in my user form, and I can click it and I can auto-populate it with my username and password. The other thing that LastPass does, which I like a lot, is there's an app you load on your phone. It will auto-complete on your phone into the web pages that you go to and into your applications. So if you're using the same username and password, obviously to log into your web version of your bank, and that password applies to the application on your smartphone, you can save that in LastPass and it'll populate it in both places. So one of the things that's really cool that I like is that I don't know any of my passwords. Most of my passwords look like that. So they are super long, alphanumeric. I change the password length sometimes to 18 or 20, or sometimes down to 12, depending on the complexity requirements of the websites that I go to when I generate passwords that need to be created or changed. So all I have to do is log into LastPass using multi-factor authentication, because it's set up on there, and all of my passwords are stored in these systems. I have a lot of people that ask, is it safe? Yes, it's safe. Can it be breached? Probably. In some point in the future, it might be able to be breached. But the good news is all your passwords will be completely different. And using LastPass, you've got a list of everything you've ever logged into and all the passwords for it. So it wouldn't be hard to go in and spend an hour and reset all those passwords once they're in LastPass. So I strongly recommend that you use LastPass. It's really awesome, and it is a lifesaver if you want to just have peace of mind about your password systems. So we're going to talk a little bit about endpoints, securing your remote endpoints. I want to make sure that everybody knows never let an unpatched machine result in a breach on your environment. And one of the things we've been saying a lot lately is do not turn a business continuity event into a disaster recovery event. What I mean by that is if you are forced to have people work from home, that is a business continuity event. If your systems are unavailable for you to access them normally and you have to revert to a different way of accessing them, that's business continuity. The last thing you want to do while everybody's remote or your team is fractured or things in multi-site system setup, you don't want to then have a breach, have something corrupted on your system, have something encrypted, and then have to go in and start rebuilding it, whether it's a server, whether it's data, building something out from backups. So we want you to prevent your users from being the weakest link in the security chain. Our advice is only secure corporate access should be allowed to access your secure systems. So if you have people that are working from home, they're working remotely, and you want them to be able to access your core network because you have applications that can only be accessed within that core network and you have a VPN set up, we recommend that you give them laptops and they use a VPN from that secure corporate asset that can be patched. Remote assets should always continue to be patched while offsite, right? You should have that stuff set up. If it's going to be an extended period of time, some of our clients have realized that this is going to be weeks and weeks and weeks that folks will be working remotely and they don't have laptops. Well, then let them take their desktop home, right? That is a secure asset. Use a VPN on it. Allow it to get into the system, allow it to connect in, allow it to be patched. It's really important these things happen because the users can be the weakest link. And if you let them set up a VPN on their home computer and that computer has a keylogger already on it, it has some sort of malware that's already been installed, it has something on it that could then potentially leak into your business network. Let's say they're using an unpatched Windows 7 machine or a Windows 7 machine that's got a vulnerability on it and they get malware on it while they're connected on VPN to your corporate business systems, that could hop into your business environment. So it's really, really, really important that folks don't do that. Now, if you have systems that you're using from home, right, and you want to secure those systems and you don't have a lot of advanced malware, one of the things that you can use is the Microsoft Windows Defender Security Center, so you can check your systems to see if your systems are secure. So you'll go down into your little tray in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and you can click on this little shield. And when you do, it'll pop up and it'll give you all sorts of super cool information about the status of your computer. And it looks a lot like this. So it'll tell you about your virus protection, it'll tell you about your firewall, it'll tell you about the device security, right? It'll tell you all sorts of really good information of stuff that's going on the computer. So if you have people that absolutely have to use their home assets, you want to make sure that you walk them through this. This is in Windows 10 and kind of check to see if there's anything on the computer that might need to be updated or handled, including virus protection. There is a lot of good, inexpensive or free virus protection that people can put on their computers at home. Go back. One of the things that you can put on your computer from home is Umbrella, which is a Cisco product. It used to be called OpenDNS. It's great for content filtering. And for the next 90 days, they're extending their free trial. So for 90 days, you can use it on your remote endpoints and it should keep people from going to known bad websites, which is really, really, really good. So that's something that you guys should be looking at. There are some inexpensive anti-malware and spyware options. We use Malwarebytes. We like it a lot. And there is McAfee. We recommend you get something on the computer. Windows Defender does a pretty good job for the most part, honestly, but we'd always recommend multi-layered security. So simple steps for securing your Wi-Fi. One of the things that we want to make sure is that you are focused on home routers when you are working at home. And you would be surprised how many people who have their home router set up, whether that's their Xfinity box or their Uverse box or the home router that they'd installed so they can get a little bit of extra coverage. A lot of them don't have a different admin password than what came with the system. So when they got onto the system and it came with a default admin password, change it. Please, 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 please. You can locate the router brand name, either Linksys or Netgear, and you can look up the specific model number on the internet, and you can put that information into Google and say, like, how do I change my admin password? How do I get into my system setup? How do I change my SSID? So these are things that we recommend that you do to make sure that your systems are secure. Change your admin password to something that you have, save it in LastPass. Make sure that you have it somewhere where you'll never forget it. Then I would change or set up the SSID for something that's meaningful to you. If you go through the home course KnowBe4 training that I was just showing you guys, there's a section on how to get in and start messing with your SSID and set it up so it's a little more secure and doesn't give as much information about you that you'd like for it being broadcast. And then configure a password. You'd be really, really, really surprised how many people have set up their home Wi-Fi and they don't have a password on it, which means anybody can sit on it, anybody can snoop it, anybody can get onto your network, including by accident your neighbors. So we recommend that that gets secure. And then if there is a guest option available on your router, which a lot of new ones do, turn it on. That way when people come over, they can connect to your guest systems without having to use a password, and you don't have to give away your secure password whenever you guys are sharing your internet with your friends and family. So these are simple steps for securing your Wi-Fi. Want to thank you guys for joining us today for our webinar. We hope that we've been able to provide you guys some good information. We don't have any questions that were brought up during the course of the webinar. But again, we just want to say thanks for joining us. Get together with us next week. We talk a little bit about business continuity and how your business can be prepared in the event of something catastrophic. So again, thank you guys so much for everything, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. See ya.